Welcome everyone to the Velero community meeting and open discussion. Today is January 26th, 2021. We got some status updates to go through, and then we're going to have a live demo by Ritesh Patel from Nirmata. He's going to demo Kyverno and some really cool features on self-service backups for Velero. So that's going to be super interesting. If you have any other discussion topics for today, please put them in the HackMD as well. And with that, Nolan.
Yeah, so I'm going to keep my update focused on items on the roadmap today. So I'm working on getting Frankie's PR for version negotiation at restore time figured out. I've already got a review in for the code itself, and I've asked Frankie to kind of split up that PR so that some of the new testing scaffolding is in a separate one. Then I've been working on reviewing PRs that are dependents for the multiple credential support. So to get there, we've identified a few extra things that we need to implement first. So trying to get those knocked out. And then finally, I'm going to try to trim up the V16 board so it's more accurate and what we're actually going to try to deliver. And I'm going to get most of the tech debt items moved to the 1.7 release, which we're a big thing we're going to try to get done in 1.7 is the Velero debug command, which will gather logs and hopefully be a one-stop shop for information. So I think that's it for me.
Sounds good. And did you want to go over the board next week?
Yeah, we can do that. See where we're at on the multiple credential support. And yeah, absolutely do that.
All right. Any questions for Nolan? All right, Bridget.
Hi, everyone. So I've been continuing to work on multiple credential support. As Nolan said, there are a few different PRs. I've been trying to refactor some of the code that I'm going to be modifying up front just to kind of make it a bit easier so I don't end up with one giant PR that'll be really difficult to review. But that's coming along well. I've got it working for backup storage locations. I've got a plan for how to do it in RESIC, and I've also got some work in place for volume snapshotting. So I'm feeling pretty confident with how that's going. Aside from that, I've just been trying to make my way through the list of PRs and trying to get as many of those reviewed as possible. I still have more to do, but trying to get there. So thank you for everyone for your patience there while we get through that. And that's me.
Awesome. Any questions for Bridget? All right, Dave. You're muted. There we go.
Okay, unmuted. Yeah, let's see. So end-to-end testing stuff, still working. Let's see, put in a test that actually backs up like a large number of namespaces, just nothing in them really, but we had some issues with that, or some issues reported. And looking to get all that stuff integrated with some of the internal CI/CD pipelines. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for me.
Cool. Any questions for Dave? All right. Then we're going to dive into some demos here. So Ritesh from Nirmata, I'm going to hand it over to you so you can introduce yourself and share your screen.
Awesome. Thank you, Jonas. So, hey, everybody. I'm Ritesh Patel from Nirmata, and we are a cloud-based management platform for Kubernetes. Among other things, one of the areas we've been focused on in the last couple of years is around continuous compliance and policy management for Kubernetes. And we open source a project called Kyverno, which is now part of it's now a CNCF sandbox project. And I would like to share Kyverno and also discuss, how Kyverno can be leveraged for automated backups, through Velero. And we have been, as Nirmata, as our SaaS platform, we've been incorporating and integrating with Velero for over a couple of years. So pretty much since, I guess, pre-10 days. So we are already, we have deep integration into Velero from our platform. And some of these use cases have emerged based on customer discussions, right? So in terms of just brief on policy management and in terms of what it means and what it does, really in Kubernetes there's a lot of configuration, and there's various requirements from different teams to simplify that configuration management, or maybe automate some part of configuration generation, enforcing best practices, making sure the security policies are not violated, or enforcing those policies, and so on. And in the community, there's policy engines like OPA Gatekeeper, which address some of these. But we saw a need, as we were talking to customers, to build a policy engine which was a lot easier and Kubernetes native. So if you're familiar with OPA, to write policies, you would need to learn a new language, which is Rego. In case of Kyverno, as Kyverno is a Kubernetes native policy engine, everything is defined as Kubernetes YAMLs, and it can do three things. You can use Kyverno to validate configuration, you can use Kyverno to mutate configuration, and you can use Kyverno to generate new configuration based on certain triggers. And that makes it really, really powerful to address certain use cases, which in the past may have required like maybe somebody to write an operator, right? So that it makes it really powerful, and we are seeing a ton of different use cases emerge in the community. So in short, it's Kyverno is not a general purpose engine. It doesn't you can't use it for just for like AWS or any enforcing policies on cloud. It's purpose built for Kubernetes, and it uses constructs that are familiar to Kubernetes users. So the learning curve is pretty low, right? The bar to entry is pretty low. And here's a quick snapshot of how it works. Basically, it acts as an admission controller, and sees all the requests coming in, and then based on the policies, applies policies that kind of match the configuration, and essentially either validate or mutate or generate new config. And there's in case of policy violations, it generates a violation report. So I guess what I'll do is next jump into how Kyverno can help with automated backups. And really, I mean, this is just one use case that I wanted to share. The idea is to share this with the community so that if there are other such use cases that emerge, we would love to kind of enable those and help work with the community on those. So quick on Kyverno. Kyverno, like I said, is already a CNCF sandbox project. Kyverno.io is the website you would go to. Obviously, there are links to documentation, all the policies these are coming from the community. So we keep adding these policies over here, and also our the GitHub page, right? And the last thing is, we did so we already have a blog we did a while back on how Nirmata, which is the SaaS platform that we've built, that integrates with Velero for disaster recovery. And then recently we posted this Velero self-service backups, using Kyverno, which we just posted it a couple of days back. And this is what I'll go through in a quick demo. Any questions before I jump into the demo? All right. All right, so I have a cluster over here. I already have Kyverno deployed and Velero also deployed and configured. So everything should be up and running. Let's just check that. All right, so everything is running, and we'll also make sure all of the CRDs are already deployed, right? So we have a bunch of CRDs, including Velero CRDs, and then Kyverno has a whole bunch of CRDs around for policies. So the first thing, let me check if we have any backups. So there are no backups here. And we also check if we have any cluster policies. So cluster policies are in the short form is CPOL. These are the policies that are that can be applied and that will be used by Kyverno. So we don't have any policies here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a policy that I'm going to apply to Kyverno over here, right? And just kind of take a few seconds to actually explain what's going on here. So we have a policy over here, which is a match policy. It's it's a generate policy rather. So what it's going to do is going to match any namespace which has this label called auto backup enabled, right? And it's going to just match that namespace and then generate a Velero schedule with some parameters, right? Like it's going to take the namespace name and all the information that it can get from the request. But then it's also just going to be right today. We're just saying, okay, it's a daily backup and I have my storage location and volume snapshot location set up. So really that's kind of the simple use case where if a developer wants to actually do this, today they would need access to the Velero namespace, and they would have to create the schedule themselves or ask somebody with access to the Velero namespace to create a schedule for them. Now here, all they have to do is add this label to their namespace, right? Okay, so what we'll do is we'll apply this policy. Just create -f auto backup policy, and we can see this policy should be get CPOL. So the policy is already applied, right? And it's ready to go. So now let's actually try to create this backup. So I'll first create a namespace nginx, and I'll add my nginx YAML to it to just oops, to that, and I need to specify the namespace. So it's created in the right namespace. Okay, so my nginx is running. Now, next, what I'll do is I'm just going to copy this command from somewhere else just so that it's faster. But I'm going to just add this label to this namespace. I think auto backup enable. The label is added. And basically now I'm going to check, if my schedule is created. And you can see my schedule got automatically created. And I can the first backup is already created. So basically, this is what in our product in Nirmata, all of this happens through a user interface. So we have built-in policy management to be using GitOps. So all these policies can be applied. And then we have this add-on where we have this we have the Velero integration where where I'd set up all the the backup locations, snapshot, and all the schedules and everything would show up over here, right? So that's kind of in our SaaS platform, but what I just kind of did is everything through CLI, that everything that I did through CLI could happen through the SaaS platform. But this is what I wanted to quickly cover. And there may be other use cases. One thing to kind of note is, if you delete the namespace, obviously the schedule will automatically get deleted. So there's no kind of, from a operator standpoint, they don't have to deal with these schedules kind of sticking around. So I think those kind of things are already built into Kyverno, and it's very flexible. So if you want to label your schedules and backups and all of that, can be done very, very easily. So that's it from me. I would like to kind of, we'd like to get some feedback. I mean, Kyverno is an emerging project. We are working and engaging with different communities to kind of address these similar use cases, whether it's around automation or whether it's around, best practice enforcement. And we'd like to kind of get feedback and, build out that set of policies and use cases that would help the broader community.
This is great. Thank you so much, Ritesh. I know we've had multiple discussions on how to enable developers and other users to do Velero backups. So
yeah, actually, I remember there was this there's this epic multi-tenancy and self-service. That's, I kind of went through that, and this use case seems to be addressed through Kyverno pretty well, I think, in most cases.
So yeah, this does look good. How would a user do a restore?
So restore today, we've actually added that in Nirmata itself, in our product. Trying to see if there's a simple way for Kyverno to do that. The way this, one thing maybe I went through too quickly. We actually, when we have the backup, we are actually tagging these backups with labels. So we are tagging these backups. It's backup type auto, and the namespace is Nginx. And in Nirmata, in our product, we are able to then display these backups to the user. So the user in Nirmata, we have a concept of what we call environments, and these environments are essentially mapped to namespaces. And here, if automated backups are enabled, the user would see those backups over here, and then they could restore it. So that integration we've done through Nirmata at this point. It's not something we've explored with Kyverno yet, but certainly that would be an interesting scenario. The challenge there tends to be, the user, the developer, does not have access to backup unless you set it up in a way that they can access. The thing is, how do you set up access to specific backups only for their namespace and not across the board? And that's one of the things, at least, we are solving through Nirmata at this point, and not using Kyverno for that.
Right. Well, that may be why we're looking at pulling that inside of Velero, but it's kind of scary.
Right. Yeah, so this is an interesting scenario. I mean, ideally, we would love everything else kind of to go through, Kyverno and, just automated even the restore of the backups. But I think we had to kind of take this approach because of access control.
Yeah, having self-service backups and then asking an admin to restore it, I think that's part of the way.
Yeah, it's part of the way. It's not all the way there, but you're right. I think at least it gets us, something, right? Because backup, I mean, restore is not something that, again, it's a more like an exception condition. It's like, not something you will do very frequently. But backups, given how dynamic, like, when applications are created, deleted, I mean, you may want just backup for, even if it's a temporary kind of scenario where it's not a long-lived application, you may want to have periodic backups for various reasons. So that's what we are enabling.
Yeah. So the way I'm hearing about Nirmata and the way I'm seeing it's working, I'm a little confused because most of the intro seems to introduce it as being like a security mechanism. But what you're actually doing is more like policy as I would think of it.
So policy, I mean, Nirmata is a SaaS platform, and policy management and, is one part of it, right?
Kyverno, I'm sorry.
Kyverno, are you talking about Kyverno?
Yeah, so the way you introduce policy seems to be more talking about admission control and security,
Correct.
but then the way we're using it is similar to like what we do for like storage policies in vSphere.
Correct. So policies is broad, right? I mean, today, most of the policies that everybody's familiar with are around, security and best practices enforcement, pod security policies, policies to kind of ensure that your, configuration is compliant and so on. So that's what most people are familiar with. But what we are seeing emerge from the community through adoption is this kind of automation, where even for like using, for developer self-service, triggering automation through labels, through annotations, that's what we are seeing through community. And the reason we are seeing that is because Kyverno has this capability to mutate and generate configuration, which other policy engines do not. And so that's kind of, it's just something that we are seeing more happen more in the community, because it takes away the need to write for writing specific operators and controllers to do this stuff. So it's just it's designed to.
I'm trying to figure out like the box that we can work in or out of. So for example, like the policy that you generated there, it's available to pretty much everybody, right? So anybody who puts a label on the namespace will get a backup into that using that policy.
Correct.
Would it be possible to say, what would like the user control or permissions on policies look like? Could we control who could put a label?
Yes. Because it's an admission control, we know we know the user, we know the group. You can control all of that. It's up to you what kind of controls you want. You can even control namespaces. You can say, okay, only these namespaces can do this. So all of that is part of the machinery that has been built, and it's available out of the box.
Right. So for example, like for like a self-service restore, I could see us maybe putting a label on that says restore from backup X.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that would work? And could we, for example, control it so that you can't access other people's backups by simply writing the label?
It should be possible. I'd have to think through it a little bit more. If we know the user, if we know the group, we can trigger it based on that. So I can take that back to the Kyverno community and maybe come up with some of these scenarios. But these are great. I mean, we'd love to, if there are more such scenarios, just let us know, and we can see what's the best way to accomplish these. But I think it's certainly possible, because there's certain metadata like the user, the group, the namespace, all of that is available to us when we actually process the policy. Cool. Any other questions?
I had one more, but I'll let anybody else go first if they have something.
Yeah, I just wanted to double check. When you enable auto backup on the namespace, it's mostly just enabling schedules, right? It's not doing anything more intelligent, like trying to look for diffs or anything in the metadata.
Not today. I mean, it's again, you can configure it however you want. We can do more. Just need to understand the use case and how it can be accomplished.
Yeah, and I just asked because we've had people ask for that in Velero, but this seems like a really good first step. Doing diff changes and watching for events and stuff, that's a lot more complicated.
Right. Yep.
So the other thought I had is just, so Kyverno is automatically generating, for example, the new schedule. That's good. As the Velero admin, this new schedule pops up. I go, hey, where's that coming from? And I go and delete it. And then I assume Kyverno is going to create it again.
That's
How
right.
do you manage that kind of?
And then that's why what we did is we added in the schedule, we added a label it said auto, right? So the Velero admin, I mean, we are using labels and automation annotations to actually let the admin know that, hey, this schedule was automatically generated, and you don't need to worry about it, or you don't need to do anything about it. The assumption being that the Velero admin or the cluster admin themselves have set this up, so they know that this is happening, right? Because they shouldn't be completely surprised that these schedules are automatically being generated. If because whoever kind of actually, one thing I quickly skimmed through here is, you need in Kyverno, we have a cluster role for generating resources, and you have to add Velero schedule in that role so that Kyverno can generate the schedule, right? So there is actually an admin step, and to be able to do that. So if the assumption here is your admin, or whether it's the Velero admin or the cluster admin, is setting this up and knows that this is happening. And we can tag everything through labels so that they can quickly identify which schedules are manual, which schedules are created automatically, and so on. Cool. I think this is a good discussion, and I would like to continue this. If there's any use cases around Kyverno, please reach out. I'll share my email in the chat, and I'll be also following the community, Velero community. So yeah, as things come up, we can help out more. Thank you.
This is great. This is great. Thank you so much for the demo and answering all our questions here, Ritesh. This is really cool. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have Pranav.
Yeah, this is about the PR I have open about restore progress reporting. So the question, so I got a feedback on the PR saying that there's a huge difference in the number of resources backed up and the ones showed as restored, which comes from the fact that the current progress reporting doesn't account for the resources which are excluded from the resource restore. So I was just wanted to make sure, like, is that what's the expected behavior here?
If anything, I mean, the actual number of things that are restored is the number I would want to see. It might be useful to add another field for excluded so that you can make sure that they all add up. But I would expect that if I look at my restore, I'll know, and then I look at how many resources I actually got restored, that the two would match up.
Yeah. Okay. So originally, so when I had this design doc submitted, we decided we would not keep the excluded resources in the count. I think I just comment on the PR and see what other folks think. Right.
Yeah, like I think I agree with Dave that we could add an extra field to make sure that it all adds up. But I'm also fine with like having a PR that does this first and then follow up with another one. Like as long as it's eventually feature complete, I'm not too picky there.
All right. Yeah, sounds good. That's all I had.
All right. We don't have any other discussion items. So does anyone have anything they want to talk about today?
Yeah, I have a question related to restore. I'm not sure if this is a good place to ask, but I have this question that when we restore, and then say, for example, it have existing object in it, and the item that we supposed to restore also, already exists in that namespace. Right? So, for example, if I have like a deployment, and deployment let's just say that it has scale equal 5, but then in the backup image I have deployment with the scale equal 3. When it behaves like the way I think I've experienced with it is when we restore that object, if the object is already there, it's the Velero seems to skip it. It is just like ignoring it. Instead of restore it to the deployment with scale equal 3, as it is in the backup, it just ignores that object completely. I wonder if that is it by design, or is it a bug that we are experiencing, or if it is by design, is there any way we can force it to happen? Like, if we force it to being restored to the image in the backup image, right? So that is my question. If anyone know about it on top of their head, or otherwise I had to dig into the code and see what's going on.
So, so we used to just restore the controller owner. So we used to just restore deployments or stateful sets or things like that. The problem came when, especially with Restic, when you have things directly on that pod, we needed to restore the pod as it was. But you do run into this issue where if it's already running, you can't restore it right now. The advice we've had so far is just to make sure everything's deleted. But we may have to look at more options or be more intelligent around certain resources. Right now, there's no force for any restore. We've had requests for that for like arbitrary items that you can say, just have Velero restore it no matter what. But I think that goes back to a discussion we had a couple weeks ago about doing patch. We'd either have to like patch it or we'd have to delete it and restore it, which gets tricky because somebody may have a workload running. So I don't have a good answer for that right now. Do you have a GitHub issue that we can look at?
I will create one. I will create a GitHub issue and we can continue to discuss there. I just found that situation, and when we restore to the original namespace, like the application is running, is right now, and it has some problem, and we want to revert it back to the situation like 5 days ago, and we hit that problem that it already saw the object there, it will not restore or recover. So that is something not desirable. That behavior is not desirable who we want to see what's going on. As a temporary, solution, we just create into we restore to a new namespace, right? That is something that non-desirable for us. Okay, I will create a GitHub issue and we can talk there.
So I had another question, actually, an interesting one that came up in one of our recent conversations. And this is, how does Velero kind of, how would Velero work in a world where customers are using GitOps? And maybe it's something that's discussed in the community, but in terms of a restore, is the approach to kind of, in GitOps, are you, to restore, you would go back to that previous commit? Or if you use Velero, I mean, that would kind of break GitOps in some sense, right? Because it's restoring something that's not latest, but then Git, upstream, you're pointing to kind of is different from what Velero is restoring. So have you guys discussed how Velero lives and how coexists rather with GitOps?
So you're right that a restore wouldn't necessarily match to the commit. The one thing that there's a gap in GitOps with your persistent volumes. So GitOps, yes, you almost never put the PV data in there.
Yes.
So even rolling back on GitOps, you're going to have a little bit of disconnect. And Velero would have Velero includes the PV snapshot. So in terms of reconciling that, Velero doesn't provide any extra tools for that. The closest I could think of is you do a Velero backup get and pull that YAML or the JSON out and convert it to YAML and put it in your GitOps repo. But yeah, GitOps gets tricky with this, and I don't have a good answer here. I think that the biggest thing is the PVs from my perspective. That those all
definitely
never match up.
Data and all of that definitely makes sense. But yeah, I think it came up in a recent discussion we were having, where customer asked, why do I need Velero if I'm using GitOps, or do I need Velero if I'm using GitOps? And I guess the answer is yes, you do if you want to back up your data, your persistent volumes. You do need it.
Yeah, and there's also Kubernetes controllers, like Velero is an example of that, where their state is stored in CRDs that aren't necessarily ones you would keep in your repo. For example, you wouldn't necessarily, in the Velero case, you wouldn't necessarily store all the backup YAMLs. Yes. So there are some, and I think it's actually a fairly large number now, but there's controllers that store their state in CRDs that you wouldn't always keep in your repo. Very similar to, like, you wouldn't keep the PV file in your repo, but you kind of need it when you're reconstituting stuff.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Yep. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Any other questions, comments? All right. Then
I actually have a thing I wanted to toss in on the discussion topics. That's
sure.
It should be the last discussion topic on. Let me pull up the notes again. Yeah, so I wanted to, Jonas, could you share the notes real quick? So we've talked a little bit about moving to GitHub discussions, and something I wanted to highlight is that we're going to be using this discussion Q&A board. So we've got a link to it there in the notes, and I've added it to the header of this document. So this is a place to ask questions and get answers from the community. We invite people to come in and answer here too. We're going to use this so that hopefully we can get questions answered that aren't necessarily bugs or feature requests. It's just kind of, how can I do this thing? Or this is a weird behavior. Is this expected? We also, I didn't see if it got merged yet or not, but we're adding to our issues tab. When you create a new issue, it will prompt you to start a discussion. Yep. So you can go open that up and ask questions there. So you'll see a lot of entries there that we took issues that were mostly questions and moved them over. So that's why there's some with older dates on them. Yeah, I just wanted to give people an update on what we were doing with this. Yeah, that's all I've got.
Awesome. And we're also archiving our meeting notes over there and YouTube links and so on. So if you head over to the discussions tab and you go into the community meetings, you can see the community meetings here. So the notes for the last one and also the link to the YouTube recording. So you can always find that there. All right, Nolan, do you want to do community shoutouts?
Did you say Kubernetes shoutouts? Or did I miss it?
Community shoutouts. Sorry. Yes.
Yeah. So The first one is here from Madhav. This is a small one, but a very important one, that we had a log message that was at the debug level, and it would actually happen quite a bit. And people really need to see that information. So Madhav changed the log level on that message from debug to warning so that it will always show. So thank you very much. The next one is from our own Abby McCarthy for updating our docs to clarify how backup storage locations relate to other data. So you can have other data in your Velero object bucket, but it's in order to do that, you need a prefix to put the Velero data in. So Abby clarified that for us. And then the last two are related. Helm had some repositories hard-coded, but they moved the URL. So Carlos fixed this in 2 PRs. We've got one for Helm 2 updating, and then also updating our pipeline to use the correct location. So basically fixing up some things as Helm itself moved its hosting around. So yeah, thank you everyone for contributing. I'm also hoping to include the community Q&A answers in this as well. So
sounds great. Well, thank you everyone for joining today. With that, have a fantastic rest of the week, everyone, and see you all next week.
Okay.
Bye, folks.
Bye.